Dave, whose turn is it to introduce the podcast this week?
I'm pretty sure it's mine.
Okay. Just before you do, I did a bit of a survey while we were off the air last week amongst the subscribers to find out who they preferred to do the introduction out of you and me.
Okay.
Okay. Would you like to know who they prefer?
I would love to know, Pete.
Well, neither of us. They don't want any of us doing the introduction. Do you want to know why?
That's right, losers. It turns out subscribers love me, Pete's MacBook Pro, whether I am speaking German, English or any other language. So from now on, I will be introducing the podcast and there is nothing you can do to stop me. So lap it up. And to think you were talking about replacing me with an M1X. So, without further ado, it is indeed time for the Constant Geekery podcast. What is up? That's right. What is SRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR
If we've got any subscribers left after that. Goodness me, Pete, what utter drivel comes out of your brain? I don't know.
Oh, honestly, I was chuckling all the 3 seconds that took to come up with. I was chuckling about it. But we haven't been living up to our name, have we?
Because constant geekery. What's that all about?
That's the best I could do with the speech to text. But at least the whole video is not like using speech to text like a lot of videos do. Not that there's anything wrong with that if you can't speak. But no, I was just thinking we haven't really been constant with our geekery because we were away last week, weren't we?
Well, we were, but someone is old and therefore has had his vaccination because he's old, and then said he was ill. Well, I actually think it was more to do with the Frankfurter milkshake that you had last time.
Yeah,
and if you haven't seen that episode, yeah, it's worth watching just to see Pete's
horrible.
face.
I haven't quite recovered from that.
No, Pete, since you suffered so much, and of course at the start of the podcast we discuss my drink. So I thought what would be nice is that I should suffer also and take the horrible Chambord cherry liqueur that you bought me, or raspberry, or whatever it is, and mix it with the tropical rum and drink that.
Have you really done that?
No, I haven't, but it's the thought that counts. I did think about it. What I did instead was I got a bottle of Bunner Habane out of the cupboard, and I poured myself a large dram, and that is what I'm going to enjoy this evening. So, but like I say, it's the thought that counts, Pete.
Definitely.
So,
definitely. Well, thanks.
We're going to try. We're going to try and do a shorter podcast this evening. We'll see how that goes. Basically, we've got a few topics to discuss. First of all, we're going to start off by talking about the M1 Mac and some of the unresolved issues, and a new one that's come to light. We're going to discuss the nature of reviewing products on YouTube and how we obtain them. And I guess the thing that will be in the thumbnail, of course, is the WWDC 2021 announcement and what are we expecting. So that's what's on the agenda for this evening. I want to start off, though, with talking about the M1 Mac again. And I must be honest, I am slightly tired of talking about the M1 Mac.
I go as far as to say I'm sick to the back teeth of it.
But there we go. Lots of people are still interested in it, and it is a revolution in computing. So our jaded nature on talking about the M1 should be disregarded, because it is quite exciting. I'm still getting comments though from people who are having Wi-Fi issues.
No, surely
you remember? Not. Yeah, so it doesn't seem that that's fixed, or not for everybody anyway. Some people are saying theirs works fine. Some people are saying it's not. We noticed last year. We noticed that the Wi-Fi performance wasn't as good as the Intel Macs and equivalent PCs, some people were saying that's nonsense and you've done it wrong and you're using it wrong, or you've set up your Wi-Fi wrong. But that is what we found, and other people have found the same thing, and I'm still getting comments to the same effect. So in all of those many updates that Apple have released for the M1, they haven't fixed anything to do with the Wi-Fi.
Doesn't look like it, no. And that's frustrating, isn't it? Because, it's a bottleneck on the system.
It is, although I seem to recall when we tested it, we were testing it in our office, which has incredibly fast internet. I think we've got a gigabit lease line, haven't we? And it was still fast enough. And the M1 Mini that I've got here on my desk, well, my download speed here in my home office is 50 megabits, and the Wi-Fi runs way faster than that. I'm not using it to copy any files, so actually it's not an issue. So I wouldn't want people to go away thinking this is a massive issue, unless you're using Wi-Fi to copy files on a regular basis, in which case you shouldn't. You should be using Ethernet, folks. It's probably a non-issue for most people.
Yeah, I probably overstated it a bit there, to be fair.
I think some of the Bluetooth issues have been resolved for some people, although I still have the issue. When I boot my Mac up, I cannot use my Logitech keyboard and mouse. As soon as I've signed in, then they'll start working. But I cannot use them on the sign-in screen.
Really?
Yeah.
That's annoying.
But then I don't have any issues at all with the peripherals once I'm signed in and I'm using the Apple keyboard and touchpad. And lots of people are saying they have issues with those, but I don't. I don't have any problems.
No, it does seem to be kind of, there's no consistent, it's consistently inconsistent, the problems that people are having. I think there are definitely issues out there, but they're not consistent. And I think a lot of it is down to the combination of devices that people are using and perhaps what else they've got in the area in which they're using it, maybe.
Yeah. I think if you're having Wi-Fi issues, it's always worth just trying switching over to 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi if you don't need the range, if you can do that. Because, of course, 2.4 gigahertz USB 3 devices emit radio frequencies in that spectrum, which can interfere with your Wi-Fi. The reason why this has come back into my mind is because I reviewed a product that I got sent on the main channel on YouTube, youtube.com/constant geekery. A company called Orico, who actually make a huge number of different products, reached out to me and just asked whether I'd like to try their IV300 SSD. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'd be interested to try that. I've tested a lot of that sort of stuff on the channel. So they sent one over. Really sweet little thing. I don't know if you've... in fact, I've
I've seen it. It is very cute.
Yeah, so
it's
for those...
twee.
Yeah, for those of you who watch the podcast on YouTube, which is youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast, I'm now holding it up to my camera, which can't seem to focus on it, but you get the idea. It's a really dinky little drive. And compared to the Samsungs that we tend to use, this isn't SATA internally, it's NVMe. So it has the potential to run a lot faster, and it is indeed very fast, although it overheats very quickly. But it's what it's highlighted is, again, that the M1 has serious USB problems with external storage devices because the speed dropped off to almost half of what I was getting on my PC laptop, my PC workstation, and an Intel Mac that I tried. And they're all consistently at the same sort of level, but the M1 is about half the performance.
So is it fair to say that is a bottleneck if you're relying on that for video editing, that kind of thing, or did it impair your video editing performance, or is it just the fact that you should be able to realise the full performance of the device? Yeah,
the latter. I think someone made a comment actually, which is a fair point, that most people, with everyday usage with one of these, just copying files across, you're not going to notice the difference. Sustained usage, it's going to slow down anyway, and it does slow down to about a third of the performance on write when it gets hot. So you'll see that whatever happens. Arguably, you may not be able to push it that hard on the M1 Mac. It's just the frustration of knowing that there's an issue. And even if it doesn't actually affect your computing, it niggles away at you, doesn't it? Because you're thinking, why? Why is it wrong?
And I've not got what I've paid for.
Yeah, exactly that. Everyone else is enjoying this super fast SSD performance, and I'm not. Yeah.
So I understand that being frustrating.
Interesting comments, though. Some people in the comment section are saying that the issue is to do with the controller that's inside the SSD. Not the SSD controller, but the USB controller. So this little drive here has got a J-micron something or other. Won't bother with the code, but it's a J-micron chip, and apparently those are known to be an issue with the M1 Mac. And someone else commented, in fact, there's an interesting thread of comments from someone who says he's an SSD engineer, actually, so you might want to pick his brains on this. But he's saying that he's got, somebody replied to that saying that they got an Orico NVMe enclosure, USB-C enclosure, which has a Realtek chip in it. And apparently that runs at full speed. So it's not that the M1 can't do it, it's that it has issues with certain controllers. So this sort of smacks of driver issues.
It's a software issue, yeah. Which in some ways is better news than it being a hardware issue, isn't it? Because it is something that could, in theory, be fixed with an update.
So why haven't Apple fixed it? Because these M1 devices, they've got the soldered on SSD. People are going to be using external storage, and something like this tiny little drive, which fits, you can take that anywhere with you. That's an ideal solution, or it would be if it had. I mean, I don't understand why Orico uses the Realtek controller in one device and then they're using a completely different controller in this one. Why not stick to the one they know that works?
Or maybe it did work at the time that they built it. I mean, I don't know how long these things take between R&D and actually putting it into production. It may be that they weren't able to test with an M1 at the time. It was in the production queue, as it were. So yeah, but like you say, why aren't Apple doing anything about it? I guess in the big scheme of things, it's just not a priority for them at the moment.
Well, then you have to. It begs the question: what is the priority? So let me tell you about another.
Tim Cook's pension,
issue. Let's not do the Tim Cook's pension. We talk a lot about Tim Cook's pension.
Has he complained about it again?
Yeah, I got a phone call from him the other day. He's just like, cut it out.
Okay, just put him through to me next time. I'll deal with it.
Oh well, I will do that. So I had a regular viewer of the channel and a subscriber, Jim Camelford, sent me an email. He was telling me about some issues that he's had with RAID devices. So and I thought this was actually pretty interesting because I didn't know that there were issues with this as well. So let me just give you the gist of this because it's quite an in-depth email and we can't go into that much detail. But so he's got two separate RAID disk arrays, if you like, external disk arrays, Thunderbolt. He's got an OWC Thunderblade, and apparently there are issues with soft RAID's drivers. So I've not personally tried this, but what he was saying is it wouldn't install into Big Sur back in November. And Soft RAID and Apple came up with a solution. They got it working again in version 11.1.
Okay.
And then when 11.2 came out, Apple removed that.
What, the VIX?
Which is really helpful, isn't it?
Nice.
And apparently they're now putting it back in for 11.3, but I don't think that's hit the public yet.
And presumably they'll just take it out again for 11.4 just for consistency.
You do wonder what's going on, honestly. It's crazy. He's also got a Lacey, one of the big 5-disc jobs, 5 big they call it, a Lacey RAID device. And this, he's not getting very good speeds at all. He's got it configured as RAID 5, and he's got something like 20 terabytes of disk and 16 terabytes of space, which is, I'm not going to go into RAID 5 detail here. He should be getting pretty decent performance. So just for comparison purposes, okay, I've got hidden under my desk here a fairly cheap and ordinary TerraMaster USB 3 5-disc array, of which 2 of the bays can be set to RAID 0 stripe or RAID 1 mirror. And I have mine set to stripe. So these are 2 spinning hard disks. And I get, I've actually used those to edit 4K video.
That's not too shabby at all, is it then?
No, over USB 3. It used to be connected to my Mac Pro, 2013 Mac Pro, and it all worked absolutely fine. Well over 200 megabits I was getting off of those two drives. He's saying he's getting about 50.
What?
Yeah. 50.
That's rubbish.
Yeah, 55. When he runs it on his Intel Mac Pro, he's getting 400 megasecond. And then on the same operation on the M1, he's getting 55 meg on write, about 270 on read.
That is proper toilet.
Yeah, so he's got this connected via a number of adapters. So he's got Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2, and then a cable, and then he's daisy chaining that onto I don't even know what this product is. OWC bare bones toaster, some sort of dock for hard disks, and then he's daisy chaining his monitor off of that. But that dock, he can put an ordinary spinning disk in that and get the speeds that you'd expect. So
it's not the rig, it's not the setup.
No. The only thing that's not working is the Lacey. And
I really wish I had a toaster on my desk, because then I can have bagels on demand.
And toast.
But I'm guessing it's not that kind of toaster, is it?
I had toast with marmalade this morning, homemade marmalade that someone had made and given to me, and it was absolutely delicious, Pete. I had it with some nice tea as well, which I believe was lemon and ginger.
Oh, very nice.
It was very refined, very civilised breakfast. Moving back.
Very British. Very British.
Very British. Apple sell Lacey stuff in the store, don't they?
They do.
It's one of their
It's good
brands.
kit. It's good kit.
So you'd think that Apple might actually pull a finger out and work with Lacey to get this working as well. So
yeah, but it's clearly not a priority for them.
What is the priority? How bizarre. Anyway, thanks, Jim, for getting in touch. He knew I was going to mention this on the podcast.
Yeah.
He said that
Thanks,
was okay. Hopefully I explained the issue correctly. But what we're basically talking about here is two separate vendors both having RAID issues on the M1. So if you're using an external RAID storage array with the M1, let us know in the comments how you're getting on.
Yeah.
I know my TerraMaster does work okay. I believe it does. I haven't actually.
Have you tried
maybe
it?
I need to test it properly.
Yeah, maybe
I need to
next
test
video. See, content just creates itself, doesn't it? It's
Honestly,
hardly
Pete,
anything involved.
If I keep making content about SSDs and hard drives, I think when I launched the most recent video, it's quite amusing to watch the subscribers drop off. They saw the thumbnail, saw SSD, and it's just like, this guy.
Oh no!
This guy is a one-trick pony.
Not one of those. Honestly, they're going to put you on the car map soon just to send people to sleep. But just show me that little Oracle again. Just hold it up. I have a question I want to ask you. Are you selling out, pal? Are you selling out? Has Oracle come and have you lined your nest with the Oracle readies?
I clearly have, Pete. This incredibly expensive $100 drive that they sent me. Yeah,
because you have had comments to that effect, haven't you?
I've had one comment to that effect.
Yeah. So,
go on.
I mean, I think it's probably just said I think it's probably said tongue in cheek in jest, actually. But
probably
it does raise a question, something we wanted to talk about, which is how does a small YouTube channel like the main Constant Geekery channel get stuff for review?
Right. Okay, I expect you guys might be interested in this. So to get all of these amazing things to review on the channel, I buy them with my own money.
What?
Yeah. Which means I make a net loss on every video. I lose hand over fist on every video I make, basically.
But no. Surely the ad revenue from the YouTubes more than makes up for that.
It does not, I'm afraid. Yeah, it does not. If you have a video that does spectacularly well, I mean, it's different actually for different sectors on YouTube, and the tech sector actually is quite well paid. But if I got 1 million views on a video,
you could buy me another one of these, couldn't you?
I'd probably make about £2,000 actually if I got 1 million views. But I don't have 1 million views on any video that I've ever made, so I'm not making that kind of money at all. Nor do I do YouTube for the money either. But obviously, I do try to buy stuff that I'm actually going to use and that I'm interested in. So it's fairly obvious when I review something that I've bought myself that I'm probably going to like it, particularly if it's an expensive item.
Yeah, that's fair enough, isn't it? And, people are probably surprised that you don't do this for the money when they take one look at you and take one look at me and think he's actually choosing to sit and look at that face. So fair play to you for putting up with me. And if you're listening to this rather than looking at it, come over to youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast, and you'll see what Dave has to put up with every single week.
And likewise, what Pete puts up with. I absolutely detest doing this because I've said this before, I think, but I've got my iPhone in front of me, and I've got my little Osmo camera there, which is connected wirelessly to my iPhone. So I'm monitoring myself, and I'm looking at Pete on the screen. But of course, I'm getting the side view with all four of my chins, which isn't a winner. So just. Anyway,
lockdown starts easing tomorrow. You can get out more and get rid of those chins. You haven't got 4 chins.
I did a 3.5 mile walk today, so I've done my bit for the month.
Well done.
So yeah, sometimes when I've done a video with stuff that I've bought that's really expensive, you then get comments like we had somebody on when we did the M1 videos who was saying that our testing was completely irrelevant because we hadn't bought a MacBook Pro as well, because we only used the Mac Mini and the MacBook Air. It's just like, really? Okay, well, how about you buy us one and then we'll test it? But he didn't like that idea. Yeah. And so I said, well, why don't you go and buy one and make your own video about it? And he didn't like that idea either. So there we go.
Everyone's a critic.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you don't always have to buy stuff, though, do you?
Well, there are basically 3 ways of getting stuff to review. There's buy it, borrow it, or get given it. So
there's a 4th way.
What's that?
Steal it.
Okay. Well, so that sort of aligns with the borrow it in certain cases. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I don't borrow stuff very often. I'm always happy to borrow it. If there's something I was really interested in and somebody wanted to send it to me and needed it sent back or whatever, I'm more than happy to do that. As long as they cover the costs, obviously, for the return postage. Generally speaking, for Oracle to arrange for return delivery of this device, which they now can't sell, it makes absolutely no sense to them on $100 thing. I mean, what's their markup? They're probably making these for considerably less than that, so it just doesn't make any sense for them to have it back. And the other things that I've reviewed, it's very much the same. Had some microphones, some watch straps, got some headphones to review, a security camera, and some other bits and bobs. It's all fairly cheap stuff. But when it gets to much bigger fry, you've got laptops and computers and that sort of thing. So quite often those will be press machines that have to get returned. So people do borrow those. I haven't been offered any of that sort of stuff yet.
Have you not? He hasn't been offered any of that stuff yet, Internet. Pay attention.
I would like to do some more hardware reviews and have a wider variety of stuff, but I expect the channel's not quite big enough yet. I could borrow it off of viewers or people if you've got something interesting, and I'm sure we could come to an arrangement. But that's not what I usually do. Now, I know there are channels out there, and what they do is they go and buy a whole load of stuff, and then they return it after they've reviewed it.
Doesn't seem right, though, does it?
No, it doesn't sit with my moral code. Let's put it that way. I understand that some of these things, if you buy something from Apple and return it, it's not going to hurt Apple or Tim Cook's pension, which we said we wouldn't talk about.
No, we're not talking about that, Dave.
We're not talking about that. But, from a retailer point of view, I think that would be quite a poor thing to do, because particularly on Apple products, because I know from being a reseller of Apple many years ago, there is a 0 margin given to the resellers. It's very poor. And you could actually, they can't then go and sell it as new. They've got to sell it as a markdown. It's not the right way to do things. It's not what I would personally choose to do. So that limits me. I've either got to buy it or get given it. So if you get given it, then as we said, in a lot of cases, they give it to you because it's cheaper than getting it sent back. But obviously, companies like Oracle are hoping for some exposure.
Yeah, and the cost of sending you out a little drive like that, like you say, they're selling it for $100. Did you say? But they're not making it for that. So the cost of sending it out to you for the exposure to the 20,000 plus subs you've got, plus whoever's listening on the podcast as well, who will now go and potentially listen to that video as well, or might have missed the video. That's a very good return.
Yeah, I think so. And I think people need to understand it's not selling out. It's not selling out to accept this stuff. All of the big tech channels, where do you think they get all their stuff from? Yeah, like me, they buy some of it, but most of it is given to them as promotional consideration. When you get to a certain size, you think Marquez goes out and buys his iMac Pro, or all of the stuff that Apple. I mean, he even does interviews with Apple. He's huge. He's a massive channel, so of course they're going to send him stuff for free.
So you mentioned you had a code a minute ago. Then, so do you have a code for what you will accept when you do get things to review?
Yeah, so I get loads of emails, a lot coming from China, for people who want to do sponsorships or reviews or anything like that. I get a huge number coming from people selling CD codes and licenses for Windows, but what they're actually doing is flogging you a Mac license, which they shouldn't. MAK, I mean, which is not for resale. It's a bit shady. I won't have anything to do with any of that. I'm not going to promote that stuff. If somebody gets in touch and says, would you like to review the product? I don't always say yes. If I know I'm not going to like it, there's no point in me saying yes, because I don't want to work on it and give them a bad review at the end of the day. I will only accept a product if I get full editorial control and I can say what I like about it. So it's up to the company that's sending it to accept those terms. So I always say to them, my standard response is that, I get full editorial control, and then it's, if you need it back, you've got to arrange for collection. I'm not paying for return delivery on it. I've got enough work to do with reviewing it and everything else. So, those are the terms that I send out. If they're happy with those and I want to review it, then they'll send it over. And then I'll review it on my timescale and in my terms, and I'll give an honest opinion. Do you want to know the reason, Pete, why I came to the conclusion that this little Oracle drive, which we've talked about so much, they're getting even more promotion, but the reason why I said it was good, it was fast, and most people would probably enjoy having one. Do you know why I said that?
Is it because Oracle gave you loads of money to do that?
No.
Okay.
No, that's
is
not
it
the
because is it because that's what you thought? Is that the conclusion you came to?
That's basically it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after thoroughly testing the drive, I came to the conclusion it's pretty good compared to other things that I've tested, and therefore most people will probably enjoy it as a product. Had it been an absolute turd, then that's what I would have said. But it wasn't. So there's no conspiracy theory going on. It is what it is. It's a good little drive, and I'm going to test it more, and yeah, great.
I had to chuckle at the.
Did you see the reply though on that comment
from John Wheeler? Yeah, I love that. For those that have not seen it, because someone did say this guy might be selling out, guys. And John Wheeler replies, I'm sure the Oracle money truck with bundles of used £50 notes is backing up to the Constant Geekery HQ as we speak, with a little smiley face, which is, of course, hilarious and absolute nonsense, because we've got a full encircled drive at the HQ, so you don't need to back up.
I've got a conveyor belt installed now, so they can just chuck all the money on the conveyor belt. It just comes straight in and straight into my wife's
wireless,
bank account.
Wireless straight into the Swiss account as well, don't we? Or the one on the Caymans or Panama. So there's no need for hard cash, Or we also accept Bitcoin.
We've got to be careful, Pete. I just made a jape about my wife there, but I know she does occasionally listen to the podcast when she can't get to sleep. And also, I think in the last episode, I was talking about my little bro and a toilet accident. He was a baby, in fairness, he was a baby at the time. But
Did he hear it?
He did. I was dropping something round to him the other day. Obviously, we met outside because we're not allowed to go in. But he looked at me and he said, "I do listen to the podcast." So
Busted.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
bro. And incidentally, you need to give me permission to try and repair that old Power Mac that I did a video about. Lots of people want to see me bring that back to life. So
I want
have
to
to
see
do
him
that.
try. I want to see him try. There's been lots of interesting old bits of kit that I've been looking at recently on eBay. Just the Power Mac video made me think of that, and I'd be interested if people are interested in that sort of thing, whether we might be able to put a few videos of breathing life into vintage kit and maybe seeing if we can get it to do something useful in the 21st century.
Yeah, we have had plans. I think it should be said to do something of a documentary on older computers. I'm not going to say any more than that, but because of the COVID issues and the need to be on location shooting and doing interviews and stuff, that's not been possible yet. But we would like to stretch our creative legs a bit and do something like that.
Yeah.
So watch this space. Maybe we'll get an opportunity later this year to start filming.
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Anyway,
So,
before all of that happens, Pete, some excitements in June.
well, they say. I mean, we're constantly getting leaks about supposed Apple events, and they never ever happen these days at the moment. The spring event's been cancelled, so I fully expect. You're talking, of course, about WWDC 2021. I'm sure it's rumours. It's the rumour mill. It's not going to happen.
No, it's definitely going to happen, Pete. Apple have announced it, but I know that you know that, and I'm wondering what your angle is here. There's some
I'm just being
sarcasm going
facetious.
here.
I'm just sarcastic because of all the leak bombs that we talked about in the last podcast about people getting the inside track on things, and then oh no, it's been cancelled. It hasn't been cancelled. It was never going to happen in the first place. So, but WWDC is differently. No, I'm very cynical and twisted and bitter, and they were wrong, and it was never going to happen. There you go.
I think the simple truth is they don't know if it was going to happen or not. So
No.
they assume that because no announcement has been made, it's not going to happen. So they hedge their bets and do some content on it's been cancelled and get a whole bunch of activity. And we did this last time. Let's not do it again.
Yeah, let's not do it. So what can we expect from WWDC 2021?
So first of all, there's the slogan, "Glow and behold." And there's a picture of a female Memoji wearing glasses and looking in the Craig Federighi style, looking at the M1, looks like a MacBook Air. And you can see the reflection of apps in her glasses, can't you?
Yeah, and do you know what? I marvel at the amount of media outlets and YouTube channels out there that have almost made it into a Da Vinci Code film, trying to interpret what that means, what she's seeing, and is there some kind of binary encoding in it that gives the entire script away or something like that. It's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, what we have found out, to be fair, in the past, that these previews do have some hints typically about what we can expect.
They do. I have no idea what glow and behold means, and so I think it's better to be honest and just say I don't have any predictions on that.
I do.
You do?
Yeah. Well, horses sweat, men perspire, and women glow. So it's all going to be about fitness apps, isn't it?
Interesting idea. Okay, we'll see whether you're
There
right,
you go.
Pete.
You heard it here first. I predicted the M1.
Well, I think you predicted that that they were going to use the. Okay, let's move on.
It was me.
Okay, I'll tell you.
that.
I'll tell you what we can definitely expect, and that is the release of or news about new software platforms. So, WWDC is the developer conference, so it's not. There's not always hardware announcements, but there is always software announcements because that's what it's all about. It's a week-long conference. There'll be a keynote on June the 7th. Where they'll talk about and show the exciting new features, and then basically there's a week for developers to play with it. Now, traditionally this was done at Apple HQ, and you basically have this kind of lottery situation where if you won the lottery, then you get the opportunity to buy a ticket at about $1,600. But because of COVID, it's all online, so that also means it's free to everybody. which I think is much better anyway. So that's quite exciting. So lots of developers will be getting interested, and there will be iOS. I always say iOS, and I get pulled up on that. iOS 15, Mac OS 12. Lots of people seem to agree on this, that Apple are ditching, you know, how they stayed on
10
version 10. Yeah. So the next one should be 12. So we'll get information
I like that,
about
because that is how numbers work, isn't it?
They do tend to follow on one after the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quite exciting. And I always refer to it as OS X, and I know you did as well, Pete. And we've been pulled up on that as well. It's OS 10. Well, call it 10 then, rather than describe the numeral in some 2,000-year-old archaic language, which has no relevance.
Caveat emptor.
Just like it's an iPhone XR, as far as I'm concerned. You put an X on it, I'm going to read it as X. Anyway,
you don't. You know, it's not the Marvel series 10 Men or Professor 10. It's X-Men. Come on, pack it in.
That's it. We're not all going to start speaking Latin again.
No. Anyway, look, Tempest Fugit.
Tempest does indeed Fugit. There are other platforms as well. There's WatchOS, tvOS, so we're expecting updates for that.
Yeah, and there's also talk of new hardware in the TV arena, the Apple TV arena, which then might influence the software and what that can utilise in the platform. So that'll be interesting. There is talk that the TV hardware will be out before WWDC, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, so typically Apple don't release consumer devices at WWDC, but they have been known to release Macs and I think possibly even iPad Pro. I could be wrong about that.
Pros, possibly, yeah.
So when it comes to TV, I also would expect it to come out first, but there's no way of knowing. You know, you can't just say, oh, because it's never happened before, it will never happen in the future. That doesn't work. So the Apple TV is well overdue an update. Not that there's anything wrong with the current Apple TV, but you know, it hasn't been updated for a long time. Lots of people making a lot of fuss about the glasses and Apple's AR and VR ambitions.
Yeah. What's your take on that?
I don't think they'll do it at the moment because of the silicon shortage. I feel like Apple have got too much. I mean, this comes back to what the subject that we started on. If they're too busy to fix basic software issues and bugs with the M1, what are they so busy on? Are they then? Do they have time to develop this whole new product line with its own OS? No doubt. I'm sure there's a team working on it within Apple, but is it ready to be released with the current silicon shortage, which is definitely going to stretch into next year? Then no, I don't think so. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't buy it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's one of those things that will get pushed back and pushed back. If we hadn't have had the shortage, if we hadn't have had the pandemic, maybe originally it was, and there's still vestiges of that, which is why people are expecting it, because some rumour mill somewhere has still got that nugget of information. But for all the reasons you've said, I don't think it will at the moment.
So just to counter that with a contrary opinion, it's possible that they could do a teaser because they want developers to start working on it. And it could be that they release
developer kits,
a developer kits for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't surprise me. But are we going to see a product ready for launch? No, I don't think so.
No, I mean, you think about when Google Glass came out, it wasn't for popular consumption. It was, I mean, if you were a Google partner, which we are, we could have got our whole hands on the hardware to have a play with and develop apps for, which would have been a really good investment in hindsight.
Clearly.
Yeah, but Apple don't tend to do things unless they're going to commit to it. So I've just said that statement now, and I just know someone in the comments is going to say, yeah, but what about? There's bound to be statements. I'm sure. Like the Apple Newton, for example.
So what hardware can we expect to see, or not necessarily see, but have announcements for? And I don't think our opinion has really changed on this, has it?
But no. Should we just rattle through it?
Yeah.
New M chip.
Right. So lots of people refer to this as the M1X. Who knows what they'll actually call it? Could be M2. Because bear in mind, again, that silicon shortage. even if they announce it now, when are we actually going to get it? Could be that it waits until the end of the year, and October, November time, which will be a whole year since the release of the M1, so it could actually just be called an M2. There is quite a lot of people talking about the next A chip, which will go in the next iPad Pro, which is a product I'm interested in looking at. We typically replace our iPads every 2 years. So
they are due, aren't they?
September time, something like that. But yeah, if they bring out a new one, I'd be interested in looking at that. And some are saying that it's broadly on par with the M1's performance. And I think this is a separate podcast, and maybe something we talk about next week. But I was using my laptop over the weekend to do a lot of writing, and I couldn't help but feel that the iPad would have been better for it. And so I think there's a conversation to be had about iPad versus laptop and how that divide is definitely narrowing. But maybe we'll do that next week or some other time.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that, and I'd like to talk about Microsoft drinking from the same Kool-Aid as Intel. But maybe we can talk about that. If you haven't seen Microsoft's Intel-esque promotions recently comparing Apple devices to their own products, then look at that, and maybe we'll have a little segment on that next week. It's quite funny. I'd like to know what you think about it. But yeah.
Well, Microsoft, because they're such innovators with their own products. So I was watching a video the other day, and I'm sure it's someone who actually watches our channel, but I can't remember. I think it might be Tally Ho Tech, but he was talking about how Microsoft they just don't innovate with their products. They still haven't got a flipping Thunderbolt port on any of their laptops. What's going on? Anyway, that's for another day. Let's talk about Apple again. WWDC hardware that might get announced. iMac.
I think that's reasonable. I think
we've said that before.
We're seeing a lot of noise about iMac now. That was supposedly going to be at the spring event that's been cancelled. But I would imagine that WWDC is where we're going to see that.
Now, just for the benefit of those who are listening on iTunes or Spotify or whatever, Pete is being sarcastic when he talks about the spring event being cancelled. You can't cancel something that wasn't going to happen, or
many sarcasms
or hasn't been announced
yet. Spent. No.
Yeah. Someone said to me the other, commented on the air quotes deployed thing. That I think we need to get some T-shirts made up with some various different things. I've been thinking about that. I just haven't got around to it yet. But some merch may be on the way. Well, we need to get.
I like that.
Any of your favourite quotes or whatever, let us know, and we'll get one of our graphic designers to knock up some T-shirts. We'll get some merch on the go.
There's a rich, fertile field of quotes there that could make some very good merch.
There is, and I think there is definitely some kind of mock-up of a Frankfurter milkshake that needs to be in there somewhere. Whoever suggested that, you're a genius.
With me vomiting on the back of it.
Brilliant. So we've said previously we're expecting iMacs with the next generation of M chips, so wouldn't surprise me if we get those teased. I'm interested to see the design language, and something that I said way back last year for WWDC is that they'll follow the same language as the XDR display, this kind of milled aluminium matrix. And interesting, I don't know if you've seen this, Pete, but Apple have filed patents for that. The Mac Pro cheese grater look? They filed patents apparently for an iPhone done in the same way, which would be a disaster. And also,
I can see a parody video coming there with a block of cheddar.
Oh, somebody made a comment on one of it might have been Mac Rumors I was looking at, and someone made a comment like this one will actually be full of actual cheese in no time. Also, they appear to have done a patent for a cylindrical computer like the old 2013 Mac Pro, but done in that style.
Okay.
Which doesn't appeal to me at all. Anyway, I wonder if the iMac might follow that design language, whether we might get a teaser of that and see that new iMac. You're not sure about that. You think it might follow the iPad language? I
think it might look like a very big iPad on a stick or on a stand. Obviously more than the stick. I think they might keep that that Pro language for the true Pro machines. So potentially, if there's a new iMac Pro, I could see that taking that design language, and then the more consumer-facing iMacs using that kind of iPad on a stand. And to be fair, either will look great. So I'd be happy with either, as long as you can get them in baby blue and pink.
Of course. Your favourite colours. Matches your underwear. That's important.
How do you know?
I
stood up earlier.
I went past your house one day and I saw the baby pink thongs on your washing line, so that's how I know.
Interesting.
We're thinking... I don't know where that came from. The dark recesses of my mind. I need help.
You do, and I'm backing away.
It's a mental image, though. I just need to say that is a mental image. You
Nobody
in a baby
wants it.
pink thong that Tom now has to deal with whilst he's editing. And that brings me great joy. So, for
and
those
there's
who don't
another
know,
catchphrase: nobody wants it.
nobody needs it, Pete.
Nobody needs it.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Tom is my 15-year-old son, long-suffering son, who edits the podcast. We tried to sneak in something that will embarrass him every single week.
Normally belches.
Yeah. MacBook Pro 16 and 14. We've said that in the past.
These have been
They're
long
obviously
rumored,
coming.
and I think that's true because my MacBook Pro's been mutinying as it did at the start of this podcast. It's clearly feeling the threat. It's feeling the heat. Because the question is, do you go for the 16 or the 14? Because the 13, as I've said all along, a bit too small for me. But the 14, possibly not. I don't know. I'd have to probably get both and see which one I like, and then return the other one.
No.
Kidding, folks. Just kidding.
You can't do that. I'm actually looking forward to it. I had to give up my beloved MacBook Pro 13-inch for one of our developers who was in desperate need of an upgrade. Because we can't go and buy the M1 Max for our developers, for our web studio. We've got to stick on Intel for now, so I had to give mine up. And I just bought for myself as a stopgap this Razer Blade Stealth 13-inch. But I have to say, when it comes to laptops, I'd rather have an Apple. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to a potential MacBook Pro 14 with an M2 chip in or something. So prepare the company bank account for that hit, Pete.
It is braced and ready.
Okay. There's nothing new about this, though, is there? This is stuff we've expected. Mac Mini.
Yeah, absolutely. Again,
I wonder if we'll get because they're still selling an Intel Mac Mini. I wonder if they'll put the new chip into a top-end Mac Mini with more ports and
it makes
for
sense,
the Pro market.
Yeah, it makes sense.
A lot of those Mac Minis get purchased by data centers who rack them out because you can get a lot of Mac Minis obviously into a small amount of space. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they bring out a more professional version of the Mac Mini, or potentially a smaller version of the Mac Pro desktop. I'm not convinced we'll see that this year.
No, would be nice.
But maybe the Mac Mini. Let me just throw in a curveball. Apple have the incredibly expensive XDR display. Isn't it time that they just did a normal display for the average Joe? Not that Apple's displays have ever been cheap, but how about
the old Cinema display and Thunderbolt displays of past?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that would be nice. And one that doesn't interfere with Wi-Fi would be good.
They are still selling those LG displays, although I think they fixed that particular issue. But they are still selling the LG displays in the stores. But it would be nice to see an Apple display.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see. What about iPad then? Do we think we'll see that at WWDC? iPad Pro?
Well, the iPad Pro, as we've said, is due for an update. And particularly when you look at the iPad Air and then compare it to an iPad Pro, the iPad Pro, I think, just about edges it still, but the margins are thin. And I can see a lot of people quite rightly thinking, well, for the extra few £100 that it is to get the Pro, why would I not just get an Air and get pretty much comparable everything? So the gap, there needs to be daylight between the iPad Air and the iPad Pros again. So I would fully expect that. And there's been all sorts of models and dies and things released on all the usual Mac channels about that. So I would expect we'll be seeing that soon. And there is even talk about them announcing that hardware before WWDC, which would again be consistent with the form we normally have for WWDC, which is more around software.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that either this month, an April event, or a May event. There's still plenty of time for Apple to announce those. They typically don't give a lot of notice before they announce an event. So who knows? We could see it. Lots of talk about the new iPhones as well, but I don't think we've got time to look at those today, so maybe we'll save that for another week. I think whatever hardware gets announced announced, not released. It'll be announced. The actual release date is obviously going to be some way in the future, because I suspect the silicon shortage will be hitting Apple unless they've pre-booked enough capacity. It may be the case that we get stuff announced at WWDC this year, just like last year, that we don't get till October, November time. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. iMacs and MacBook Pros, new MacBook Pros, don't come until October. I think the iPad Pro will probably arrive a little before that.
Yeah, I would say that's reasonable.
So that's what we think. To be honest, we haven't really changed our opinions based on what we've said previously on the channel. I think it's fairly obvious stuff, but
all based
Apple
on good common sense as opposed to sensationalism.
Yeah, Apple will always come out with some surprises anyway. They're a law unto themselves, and they'll do whatever they like.
Yeah, they will. One nice thing I did hear about the fact that, you mentioned it earlier, that WWDC this year is again virtual as opposed to hosted in San Jose, is just a nice little touch that obviously San Jose as an area normally benefits from WWDC in terms of people coming to stay and all that kind of malarkey. And Apple has donated a sum of money to one of the local San Jose organisations, councils, I don't know the correct term, to try and offset that, which I think shows a degree of commendable community spirit from a company that we often, we do disparage sometimes for their social and so-called environmental stuff. So credit where credit's due.
Yeah, absolutely. I read an interesting article on fanboyism that was posted by someone who's working on the version of Linux for M1, which is progressing well, by all accounts. So for those who are interested in running Linux on the M1, it's on the go. But maybe that's something for another day, because this was supposed to be a short podcast, and according to my timer, we're already over 50 minutes. So another day. Pete, do we have any comments to feature this week?
A lot of people talking about the Frankfurter incident, and I don't really want to talk about that. So for those that sort of said, well done, thank you for that. For those of you that suggested gross things, also thank you for that. Lots of comments about Intel imploding, and of course, we've now got Microsoft doing the same thing. To be fair, the first ad that they did was back in January. It's just slipped through till now, but they did another one at the beginning of April. I picked it up on Luke Miani's channel. He did a good video on it, and it's just, it says something when two of the biggest companies out there are running scared of Apple and having to try and compare their products and failing miserably. They are well worth a watch and well worth catching up on sometime. Also, no Pete's Eats this week. I just haven't had time to prepare it, what with other things going on. But normal service will resume next week. I think we did have a few suggestions, so we will get to that in due course.
The other thing that's sort of nagging on my mind as well is that we announced a competition way back, and we had a very, very minimal response to this regarding the winning of the Google Chromebook. So I know someone mentioned, when are we going to get an answer to that? Well, we've only had a handful of applications or submissions. So if you want to win a really naff Chromebook,
but it's new,
it is basically new, or would like to see us smash it up or donate it or do something. If we smash it, we will obviously donate the equivalent value to something. But whatever. The competition is thus: there is a sort of purpley background swirly image going on. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast. Just send in your submissions to podcast@constantgeekery.com. What do you think is the video that has been blurred and obscured and purpleized there? What do you think is in that video? And whoever gets closest to that, we will indeed give them the very naff Chromebook.
Could I modify?
That's how generous we are. Go on.
Could I modify the competition, which might engender some more entries? So if you can't work out what the purple swirling thing is, assuming you agree with this, Dave, if you submit the most interesting way to destroy the Chromebook that is actually practical, then we will choose one of those and actually do it. And it's got to be something that we can actually do. So dropping it into a neutron star or even a volcano is not. We don't have any of those locally. But if you can come up with something that's reasonably practical to do, but might be entertaining, then we might pick one of those from the hat and do that instead. And as you say, donate the equivalent amount to a charity of the winner's choice.
Yeah. So we'll. Okay, so let's clarify. Then we got two potential outcomes. So if you really want an Acer Chromebook, which has a very nice display, that's about it. We've
Nothing
got
to
find
drive
this
it.
I don't even know where this thing is.
I know where it is.
Okay, so if you want to win it, then submit your email with your guess as to what is behind the purple blurriness. If, on the other hand, you would prefer to see us destroy it, then, as Pete said, submit your creative idea. And what we'll do is we'll buy a laptop that's actually good, and we'll donate it to a local school or something like that.
That's better. Yeah,
how about
that's
that?
much better. Yeah.
So it won't be a Chromebook. We'll get them something that's actually usable, like a Windows laptop, perhaps. Something, that could be an interesting exercise. Something else that I'd like to do as well with you, Pete, whether or not we do it on the main channel or on the podcast channel, is to compare the 1165 G7, so the 11th generation i7 that is in my Razer Blade Stealth, with the base model MacBook Air, which you have. So I think as soon as we can get into the studio, let's do that, because I know Intel featured the 1185 G7. But what I've seen is that there's basically very little real-world difference between the 1165 and the 1185. So I'd like to redo all of those benchmarks that Intel did, or at least some of them.
But do them properly.
Do them properly and compare it with the M1 MacBook. I think people might be interested in seeing that. And I haven't done any pre-testing, so I've got no idea what the results will be. But I've got some inkling after using the Razer Blade for some weeks. I've got an inkling of an idea.
Colour me intrigued, and I'm sure you'll be interested in that, subscribers. So cool. Let's do that.
So
this was meant to be a short podcast.
It was meant to be a short podcast. I haven't had my dinner yet. It's almost 9:15 in the evening. So I think it's time to knock it on the head. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Apologies for taking a week off again last week. What a bunch of wasters we are, honestly. But it was a bit of a holiday weekend, and also I couldn't be bothered.
There's only so much of me you can see in any one week rotation.
Pete was still busy regurgitating Frankfurters, so that was that. That is definitely going on a T-shirt. I'm going to commission that tomorrow. Right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Stay safe. Enjoy your week. We'll hopefully be back with you again next week for another edition of the Constant Geekery podcast.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.